Hey, 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 you gorgeous beauties. So, welcome back to the Be Free podcast. And this week's episode is a little bit of a personal one, but I wanted to share it with you with the hope that it inspires you and you take some nuggets away from my experience. And I'm sure that many of you will be able to relate. So if you've seen the title of this episode, you might be like, what is she even on about? Manifestation, perimenopause, and grief. Okay, I'm throwing it all in this episode. So I'm 43. It was my birthday yesterday. I had the most incredible birthday. Absolutely spoiled, just felt really nourished. It didn't kind of start off as planned because my daughter was off school ill, but I got a lovely dog walking, time at the spa, friend popped over, yummy food, good movie. Hey, that's the life of a 43-year-old. Actually, there was also yoga, meditation, and yeah, Fizzero. Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, I thought I would pop this random combo of subject matters into one podcast in the hope that it supports you. And we're going to start off with the whole manifestation part, because as I turn 43, each year for, I don't know, however many years, I'm like, this is the year. My friend Erica and I are always like, this is the year. When 2022 hit, we were like, this is the year. Apart from my husband was in hospital on oxygen at that time. And I'm like, okay, I'm not quite feeling this is the year at that point. But I'm like, okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And I just like, I'm almost a little bit scared to declare it now, because every time I declare it, it's like the universe throws me some kind of crazy ass curveball. So prior to recording this particular episode, I was thinking about manifestation. So if you have followed me for any length of time, maybe you've done my vision board and manifestation course, you will know that I absolutely, one, love setting goals, two, manifestation, law of attraction. I am like proper hooked on all these subject matters. And recently I have really been into decluttering, finding out about feng shui, looking at the energy of my home, and working a lot with that, as well as working with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, listening to his meditations, really trying to, and this is the wrong word, trying, and this is where I'm going with this, to attract in that which it is that I wish to attract. Now, I have attracted certain things. This year I've attracted my car, which I bloody love. It's in the garage. It had to get towed away the night before I was supposed to go away for my birthday. This is what I'm saying. Every time I'm like, this is the year, this is it. Something happens. But anyway, I'll come on to that in a minute. But yeah, so I have just had my trademarking approved, which has been a real lengthy and costly process to get my Be Free Freedom from Anxiety trademarking approved. Now, this is something I have been writing in my gratitude journal, like pretty much every single day for a long time, but I did surrender it. So this is the thing with manifestation, and this is kind of where this podcast is going: surrendering, acceptance, and I'll be speaking about the 5 stages of grief. So this is where this podcast is going, if you think, what the hell is she talking about? So the trademarking, it got to the point where I'm like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. I actually had submitted a trademark last year, a while back, a different trademark, which had been declined. And then I received an email a couple of weeks ago saying, your trademark's approved. And I'm like, yay! And then when I opened it, it was for this old one that we're not even going to be using anymore. And I'm like, and I kind of got a bit frustrated and annoyed about it. And then I pulled myself in and was like, this is not the energy I want to convey to the universe. So I reined it back in. And then went back through to my husband and went, okay, let's celebrate. So celebrated that trademark coming through, despite the fact it wasn't for the things that we wanted it to be covered for, and it wasn't the right trademark. Still celebrated. So I have another Be-Free trademark, you know, should I ever need to use it. And then 2 weeks later, we got the official trademarking through. So you'll be noticing the podcast already called Be-Free. My coaching is Be-Free. My membership is a way to change to Be-Free. The website, everything is going to be coming under this beautiful trademark. Our journal and planner, we are in the process of designing, can now get to go ahead more fully. So things are progressing in that way. Trademarking manifested, horse manifested, planning permission with ease. I've been trying to manifest that, and our architect said that to him when we contacted him to say, oh, the planning permission, I noticed it's been approved. And he was like, oh my gosh, I was expecting them to come back and at least, try and amend something. So I was like, haha, it is working. Incredible clients in my 5 weeks to calm course. Ladies, I manifested you. I was looking for some super duper beautiful clients who are going to show up, do the work, and just be an absolute joy to work with. And that's happened. Same with my membership, my incredible, beautiful members in my community. Bloody love them all. So anyway, those things happened. However, there were two big things that I had been trying to manifest. One of which was last year, which was our adoption. And it was a process that I really felt like there were so many signs that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is meant to happen. This is meant to happen. As we went through the process, it was like door after door after door, felt like it was getting shut in our face. And we just kept going and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Then the door reopened and we would start again, then something else would happen. And in November, we were supposed to be doing an adoption training. We were thinking, okay, 2022, maybe be the year that we'll have our child. And they emailed us to say we've had to cancel the training. It'll be sometime in 2022. We don't know when. And it kind of really threw a curveball because our children knew that we were adopting. Obviously, we were all like super excited. And we'd really been making so many decisions based around that outcome happening that a lot of our life had been put on hold. Like we weren't doing certain things because we wanted to make sure that we had enough money in the bank, and we weren't, we're looking at a dining table, for example, and we're like, oh, the corners are a bit pointy, we should probably get something more rounded because, you don't want a child to bash its head and all that kind of thing. So we were making so many decisions based around this child that hadn't occurred yet. And so that got cancelled, but also in the process of that, I had been to the doctor and discovered some lumps in my breast. So I had to go for a mammogram and a scan up at the hospital. And this was the day after we got told that the adoption was going to be postponed for however long, indefinitely. And went up to the hospital and had my mammogram, got the results there and then, which was amazing. Like the consultant was absolutely incredible, lovely, lovely gentleman. And he basically said that it was due to hormonal changes and just kind of aging process. And yeah, that's kind of where it was, but it was nothing sinister to worry about. And it was at that point I thought, we are pushing and pushing and pushing this adoption process. I'm not really getting any younger. And maybe, Susie, you should be looking for a life of ease, and not struggle, not constantly fighting against something, even though in your heart you're like, oh, I know, I really want, to have this child and, all of those things. But at that point, I thought, I'm going to move into a space of acceptance of my aging and of the hormonal process, and just kind of for my husband and I to, you know, our kids are getting older, and enjoy our lives a bit differently. Enjoy beautiful horse that I like had now have on loan from one of my friends, um and all those things. So that happened, took a step back, and this is where the grieving element of things come in as well. So a lot of people associate grief with the death of an individual. But what I have discovered over the past kind of 3 months, and not just discovered the past 3 months, but I've been experiencing the past 3 months, is that I've been experiencing grief over the loss of a child that I never even had, you know, grief over that process. And I'll come on to another form of grief in and around my business. And I'll speak to you about that. And a lot of people experience grief in different ways. So, you know, you might experience grief over the loss of a breakup, a partner. It could be a pet. It could be grief of, I see this a lot with the women I work with, a life that you once had. So maybe before you had a certain type of life, and then maybe just because you had children, your lifestyle changed, and you're like grieving over this person that you were when you were younger. But we don't often call that grief. And I'll explain a little bit about the kind of process, grieving process. But, you know, so I was grieving over the loss of this child that we never even had. But because I had been manifesting this for years, I had been visualizing every single day that child, like in various locations, like us being away as a family, all these different things, over and over and over again. Now, what my conclusion is from this process is that maybe I was being too controlling. And this is what keeps coming up. So I've written some words, you know, surrender, acceptance, are words that I'm kind of working through just now, release, grief, moving through those things. So, you know, the kind of constant trying to make the adoption thing work, maybe that was too controlling, and not being more in that state of acceptance of, okay, when we discovered that we were infertile, and that like not going through the IVF and stopping the IVF process, then, you know, maybe at that point I could have been like, okay, like, you know, we have the most incredible family, and not push it. But I didn't feel like that was the end, and I kept going and kept going and kept going and thinking something would happen, and it never. So yeah, so that's part of that. So then the aging process. So then I've started to get all these perimenopausal symptoms, and so many symptoms. It's off the scale, from some kind of crazy droopy hormonal eye thing that I get, to having to go for pelvic physio, and just feeling kind of jittery at times, slurring my words at times, pain, like almost like arthritis. Honestly, I could keep going and going and going and going and going. Crazy ass mood swings, all sorts of different things. Now, I spoke to the doctor about it. I eventually got to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna speak to the doctor about this, because obviously the lumps in the breast, that was due to hormonal things. And so I spoke to the doctor, who was lovely. She was really, really lovely. But the options were lose weight, which I am trying to do. I've just joined the gym. Lose weight, or antidepressants. Now, I could tell she felt a little bit awkward kind of mentioning it to me, given that the you know, that I tend to treat things holistically. But I understand, you know, I understand that that is an option for many people. And on that conversation, she said to me, I noticed I was looking at your records and you've had antidepressants back in 2014. And I kind of started laughing because what that, that was like the day of doom for me. That was the start of my breakdown, was in 2014 when I took that antidepressants, and I ended up on the phone to NHS 24, thought I was having a heart attack, thought I was going to die, ended up in my bed, like not able to speak for however long. But it really caused me to look back at my life. And I went onto my Facebook, actually, went back to 2014 to try and find a picture of myself, to see what that Susie looked like, and to look into her eyes and see the pain that that younger version of myself was experiencing. And I wanted to connect with her and tell her that we're okay, like we're good now. And this is something I would ask you to do. Yes, it can feel like we're struggling right now. So as I say, it's kind of struggling with the whole adoption thing and the perimenopause thing, and then my husband being in hospital and my car breaking down, and all these like cumulative things, my daughter having issues with her school and all sorts of different things. But I recognize that I've come so far, and I have these tools now where I'm not plunged into a dark depression, where my anxiety is not crippling me from leading my life, where I actually love myself. I love and I value myself and I respect myself, and have the awareness now to look at ways to support myself. And I would ask you to do that of yourself. If you feel that you're struggling right now, is this something that's been going on for a long time? Is it worth looking back at that younger version of yourself? Have you come on since that time? A lot of time we're being ruled by this younger version of ourselves that, just needs a little bit of soothing. So that's something to think about. But in the process of this conversation with the doctor, I came off the phone from the doctor, and again, I, in my usual style, was like, right, well, I will find a way to overcome this whole perimenopausal process. I'll, up the flax seeds and get on the, take more evening primrose oil. And, I've got my own little perimenopause program on the go right now. But, then I was like, I think there is a message here, Susie, and that is a message of acceptance, of accepting where you are, of surrendering to, not surrendering just to the aging process, but being in that space of acceptance that it's a time of change again. It's a time of transformation, and to not fight it, to not resist it, but to move with it and work out ways that you can flow with that change and transition. And this is where the whole grief thing comes back in again. So grieving the life we once held. So when we're hanging on to something from our past, whether that be a person, a job, a situation, or younger version of ourselves, it prevents us from being present. It prevents us from seeing the opportunities, seeing the good that surrounds us, and finding solutions, because we're so stuck in this fixed mindset. So yeah, acceptance. So the perimenopause is teaching me to move even more deeply into surrender and acceptance. The manifestation, as I mentioned, obviously the adoption stuff not happening. I also was in the process of manifesting my daughter a place at private school, which I was so convinced was going to happen. I could see her. I was visualizing it every day. I was picking her up from that school. She was looking so happy, all those things. And then got a letter on Friday saying, no, sorry, she's not accepted. And I was so shocked, really, really shocked. And at the same day, that was the day my car broke down and had to get towed away, which wasn't much fun. And then I'm like, okay, universe, thanks, what's going on? And this is where I recognized the surrender. Acceptance and surrender. Stop trying to control so many things and just be a bit more in the flow. So I, during all this, was feeling some not very pleasant feelings and emotions, and I spoke to a friend about it, and she said to me just to sit with it, like, what's going on for you, where are you feeling it, what are you feeling? And what came up was grief. And as I've mentioned here, it took me a moment to realize that it was kind of grief from my mum passing, which is, that's a number of years ago now, but anytime, because it was my birthday yesterday, anytime there's big things, that comes up. Grief around the adopted child, from that adoption process not happening. And then grief to the changing of my business, which sounds really crazy, because it's still me, it's still my business, but it's evolving. And that spirit and soul that I started 6 years ago isn't the same business now. And I'm releasing that name. And that name actually, for those of you who maybe haven't, known me for a while, but Spirit and Soul was actually the name of a beauty therapy business that I used to run when, must be like 10 years ago or something, maybe more than that, I don't know. And that was the name of that business. So it was just because I had the domain and I had a Facebook page with that name. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to start up this other business, the Reiki and meditation and stuff. I'll just use that name, kind of works. So that's where that name came from. So that name wasn't even, created for this business. But now Be Free is going to be the name moving forward, Be Free with Susie McWilliam. And I'm excited about that, but I am also really nervous and, as I say, sad. So I'm kind of grieving a bit and hanging on to that old name, that old identity, and a bit scared to kind of step forward. So I wanted to explain to you just the 5 stages of grief. I did actually do a whole series of this for the Miscarriage Information Support Service in and around grief. And I am going to be doing a Facebook mini training on grief in my private Facebook group. So I will pop a link in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you will find the link there to my Facebook group. So do come join us. I will be doing a mini training on grief, exploring this topic a bit further. I did mindset last week, and this week we're actually going to be looking at creating habits. So good time to come join us. But the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the kind of annoying thing about grief is they don't have to follow that order. And you don't just suddenly get to acceptance and it moves away. So you could be in denial, but like, oh gosh, this isn't happening, that hasn't happened, there's no way that can happen. Kind of denying it. Then you get angry, like oh my gosh, why me? This isn't fair. And like, kind of arguing with the universe, with God, whatever it is you're grieving that is lost, whether that be a person, as I mentioned, or a job, and then the bargaining, like, oh, if only I'd done this differently, or what if this had happened, or why did they do that day, or what if I had been there more, or, we begin that bargaining process. Then we move into the state of depression. And depression really is that longing for something we once had. We want the things to be the way they were, and they're not. And that is a really, really challenging situation to be in. And then we can move into a state of acceptance. And it doesn't mean that you accept it fully, but you can maybe accept that it's happened. You can maybe accept where you are. You can, begin to recognize, okay, this has happened. I'm not happy about it, but, what can I do? So that is the 5 stages of grief. And I was experiencing those things, but not because someone had died, partly because my mum had died, but that was obviously a long time ago. But, grieving my youth, and I know I'm only 43, so anybody who's older, I'm not saying, gosh, I'm so old. I'm not. I absolutely love being in my 40s. But, you know, grieving that youthfulness, that having that energy, grieving the loss of the child that we didn't manage to adopt, or, you know, grieving the business and the transition and moving and leaving some customers behind who maybe don't want the services I offer anymore. And I miss that. I miss so many of my clients because I'm not offering some things that, you know, people used to come to me for. And yeah, I thought, as I say, it's a randomer podcast today about manifestation, grief, and perimenopause. And yeah, I thought that I would share that with you. And if you are struggling with surrender and acceptance, or you have emotions that you're experiencing that you're, you know, not quite sure what they are, sometimes just sitting back and checking in and reflecting and thinking, okay, what is going on for me right here? And being accepting of where you are, not trying to change it, not trying to control it, can give you peace. And that's what I'm discovering on this journey. And that's what I wish for each and every one of you who is listening today, that you find that peace, serenity, and acceptance in your own life, and that you also get to manifest the life of your dreams. But sometimes the universe has bigger and better plans for us. And I hope that, yeah, those plans are winging their way to you. So be in that space of knowing what you would like, putting it out there and seeing what comes, releasing control, surrendering, accepting, meditating, breathing, being mindful, being grateful, surrounding yourself with beautiful people. And I think that's all for me today. I don't even know how long I've been talking, but I really hope that this podcast has meant something to someone out there. And if it has, then I would love if you can leave a review on iTunes for me, or share it with your friends, share it in your stories on social media or your pages. Spread the word about the podcast. I've got some incredible guests coming up. I know many of you enjoyed last week's episode with Birgit, so please go check that out. Spirit and Soul membership doors are opening on the 21st of March. Might not be called that by then. Who knows? Depends if I get round to it, but I'm moving with grace and ease. It will be the Be Free community. Same place, same incredible people, same incredible support, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, Reiki, incredible guest experts, incredible themes monthly. So if you want to join us, go get yourself on the wait list, drop me a message, I can send you a link. And yeah, super excited to have you all in there. It's one of my favorite places to hang out and such a great place of safe space of support. Okay, I am going to go now. Love chatting to you guys. You know where I am. Tag me at Be Free with Susie McWilliam. I would love to hear from you. Go spread the word. Sending you all so much love from my heart to yours. And I will be back next week. Be free, my loves.